We're here today on Country Pocket with Willy Vlautin. He is maybe not the lead singer, but the frontman of the Delines. The new album is Mr. Luck and Miss Doom, and the song you just heard is called Her Pony Boy. Um, let's talk about the subject matter of this album. Uh, Drugs, miscarriage, fire, death, cheating, domestic violence, underage prostitution, just so much difficult stuff. Um, what was the vision behind telling these stories?
Well, I tend to always write uh, about kind of people on the ropes, or people that have a few dents in them. I mean, the record really started Mr. Luck and Miss Doom. Amy took me aside one night after a gig, and she said, kind of grabbed me by the arm and said, "Listen, man, I'm a normal girl. I want a love story once in a while. I want a song where nothing bad happens." And she goes, "You're killing me with your darkness, with such dark songs." And so I went home, man, and I tried my best after that tour, and I wrote a bunch of happily ever after love songs, and then I wrote a Mr. Luck and Miss Doom about a depressive house cleaner and a bumbling criminal who gets busted after his first crime. And it fell apart from there. I guess the most romantic other song is the song you just listened to, Her Pony Boy, which was inspired, but that idea of romance, the idea of running away and living on rail cars and squatting and living a life on the road. And I think that a lot of that imagery from that just came from Portland, where we are all based out of. Portland has an immense amount of young people living on the streets, and you just can't help but have that soak into what I'm working on. So many people living in tents, living in old broken down RVs and cars, and it's both men and women, and so many of them are young. And so I think that song was both romantic with the hope of of love and seeing the country, and then drugs and the reality behind living that hard and living that close to the ground.
Yeah, in in the song Her Pony Boy, you have this long story. They're traveling the country. Uh, how do you come up with such massive backstories for these characters?
I mean, I think I always, I write novels. I write novels for a living, really. Um, and I get, the band will want to, Amy will want to throw me out of a window half the time. My old band, Richmond Fontaine, practically did throw me out of a window for writing such long story songs. But, I just get caught up in those old, really long folk ballads. Story songs have always been my favorite as a fan, to listen to. The idea of escapism, um, it always pulled me. That's what made me start playing music or writing tunes in the first place. But with this one, it really was, that idea of being young and innocent and going on the road with no safety net, really. And like I said, I guess, yeah, I've just seen so much of that. Or the kids riding the rails, that whole young hobo thing. Sometimes you'll see those guys walking around, and so the long stories just kind of develop. I just tinker on them and tinker on them, and then the story evolves. And the backstory, I put a lot of backstory for the few people that listen to lyrics will hopefully can go down a lot of different avenues within one song.
The few people that listen to lyrics, I would certainly consider myself among those people. And I feel like people enjoying your music are going to be fans of lyrics.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I hope the baritone guitar and Her Pony Boy and the romance of that one and the imagery. That was kind of always a personal favorite of mine on the record. So I really appreciate you playing it.
Um, Talk to me about how you present these stories. Obviously, uh, you said you're singing about people on the ropes. Talk to me about how you write these stories in such a way where there's consistent empathy and respect for these characters.
Yeah, I mean, I never think of writing anything but with an empathetic tone, you know. I mean, a lot of these are the soul might be me struggling with something. I always have kind of written where, you know, I'll tell a story a way around the way I might be feeling or struggling with. Um, on this record, you know, there was another time Amy took me aside and she said, "Look, why can't a middle aged woman get the money and run? Why can't she get out on top?" And so I started thinking about that a lot. And so then started writing songs like Maureen's Gone Missing about a
We'll
woman
talk
who,
about that one later.
yeah, and Nancy and the Pensacola Pimp, and, you know, songs where kind of women do good. Left Hook Like Frazier, where a woman's, you know, warning other broken women to watch out for bad men. So I think part of it is just, you know, I grew up in Reno, and I used to, Reno at the time was a town that had a big segment of drifters living in motels. And I think it was never lost on me that how close it was from where I was living to maybe ending up in a motel. So I think I've always written from that edge, out of both romanticism and fear, and, you know, a resigned idea that I would end up like any of these characters, and I, you know, possibly still could. But so I think, you know, from an early age I was writing these kind of tunes, you know, from a 12 or 13, man, I was writing some pretty long dark folk ballads.
How much interaction did you have with these drifter type characters?
You know, I worked with, you know, in the summers I'd work. My mom worked at a place where her boss hired guys off the river, and he tried to rehabilitate guys. I don't know what what his motives were. I don't think it wasn't like he was a saint, man. So I don't know what he was doing. So, you know, I'd work with the guy for a summer, and then my mom would, like 3 years later, my mom would go, you know, he's back on the river. I was taking my walk by the Truckee River, and I saw him pushing a cart today, so he couldn't make it. I think a lot of that, you know, throughout growing up, and then, you know, I had a couple friends go sideways and end up living in the motels in my 20s, and so, you know, and I almost ended up in that route myself for a while, and so it sticks with you, those that kind of, you know, the heart of that stuff's always been inside me.
What do you mean almost wound up there yourself?
Oh man, just living hard and, you know, self-destructive, and, you know, I just worked at trucking companies and warehouses, and, you know, and I was going to live in this hotel called the El Cortez, and then at the last minute, a buddy of mine goes, "Man, you won't end up anywhere good if you end up there," and he found me a better place somewhere else. So yeah, you know, that edge between giving up and trying, uh, I've always been on that edge. So I mean, it's gotten less as I've gotten older, but man, it was there from, you know, say say 15 to about a week ago.
Let's move on to one called Don't Miss Your Bus, Lorraine. I feel like the voice shifts on that song, where, like I said, there's such empathy and understanding in these stories, or you're telling them straight. But this is one where I think you give a little window into how society treats these people, with the refrain and the background singers just sort of demanding of her that, you know, she does better. She checks off all the boxes on her parole. Um, Tell me about I guess the message of that song.
Yeah, so Don't Mention Bus Lorraine's about a woman that goes to prison for marijuana convictions in Oregon. And when she gets out, she realizes they've legalized marijuana now, and now there's marijuana stores on. There's as many, in Portland anyway. There's as many weed stores as there are bars nowadays. And so she gets out of prison to realize it's now legal. And then I remember, I live in outside of Portland and outside a little town, and I was in town at the store one day, and I caught these two old ladies talking about like two good old Christian ladies, small town ladies, talking about. One lady goes, "Well, I just take a gummy at night and I go straight to sleep." And then the other is like, "I've been using that CBD oil on my knee and it really helps." And the acceptance of marijuana now in such a short period of time is insane, because 5 years before that, if you overheard those ladies talk about somebody smoking weed, they go, they should go to prison, they should go to prison, that's awful. And so Lorraine gets out and she's a felon, and once you're a felon, it's really hard. It's way more difficult. Things are stacked against you to get back into normal society. And so here's this woman who, again, she's cleaning hotel rooms as a maid, and she can't make enough money, and she's a felon, and so it's harder for her to get a better job. And now weed's legalized. So your most political song on the record, by far, and the refrain is the guys in the saying, "Hey, Lorraine, you better not miss your bus. Like, you better not get fired from this job." And Lorraine's just struggling. And then the very last song on the record is,
Yeah, we'll get
kind of
to
a
that.
refrain
You
from
you
that, like,
keep
Lorraine,
jumping
don't.
ahead, man. You keep jumping ahead.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, you're talking about the politics, the not just the fact that the marijuana situation's changed, but it's so strange for people living on parole, or probation. Things like making a bus are major, major incidents in their lives where it could be the difference between prison or not. And I think I think you found a way to present that fact as high stakes and perhaps a little absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I was really influenced. I have been by the new Jim Crow. It's a book about incarceration and about felony convictions. But yeah, it's that idea of, we have over 2 million people in the prison system in some form, and just the, like you said, the absurdity of a woman getting out of prison, she's done her time, yet it's all stacked against her, and kind of in a subtle, sometimes not so subtle way, funneling her back into the prison system.
Yeah, I would agree that it's not particularly subtle. Um, we're gonna listen to Don't Miss Your Bus, Lorraine, and we'll be right back.